Heyo everyone, this is Jay from Boulder Creek Railroad. This is part 2 of my Southern Pacific Coastline Layout Build project. This video will cover benchwork design and adding a foam base for scenery. If you haven't seen part 1 of this project, a link to it will be in the description. That goes over the theme of the railroad and some of the basic design elements that will be in the project. So with that out of the way, let's get started. To start, let's take a look at the layout design here. The way that I have this plan made up is so that each square represents a foot. This makes it easy for me to visualize the size of each section of the layout, and helps me see where my cuts, supports need to be for the layout. With that information, we can see that the layout is 3.5 by 10 feet. This size is very similar to that of a classic 4 by 8 layout, so many of the design principles that go into 4 by 8 benchwork will apply to a layout of this size. So I took a quick trip to the hardware store and bought some cheap 2x4s to build the legs and frame for the layout. Here you can see an image of that frame that I built. I was very careful to make sure that I had it exactly 3.5 by 10 feet. Now you may notice that on the back of the frame I have these little screws on sections of 2x4. One of the design constraints I had to deal with was the foundation of the garage. It sticks out roughly 3 inches from the wall, so I added in spacers for my legs so the layout would be flush against the back of the wall. The next step was leg design. I took two 2x4s and wood glued them together. I then followed that connection with a nail gun to make sure that those sections were kept in place while the glue dried. It creates this L-shaped leg. This helps tremendously with stability and allows for 2 points of connection to the frame. One of these legs was added to each of the 4 corners of the layout. I then screwed a single 2x4 down the center of the layout to add extra support to prevent any sagging the layout may have. Adding a plywood top was the step after that. Now I used scrap pieces of plywood to save cost. This did save me money, but it also meant that there were small gaps in my top. This was okay though, as the top of the layout would be covered in a foam base anyway, eliminating any gaps or high spots on the table. An interesting design feature I added in was a small cutout for a canyon beach scene. These cliffs with a beach down below are common in California's west coast, so adding in one seemed right. To build it, I cut out a 1 foot by 2 foot section of plywood and then cut an L-shaped section into my benchwork. I screwed together the sections and added an extra support as a resin beach would be added here, increasing the weight on the plywood. I then added some simple shelves underneath the layout for storage in the garage, and then I was finished with the benchwork. The next step was to add in a foam base. So here is what my base layer of foam is going to be, and my top layer for carving. It's this Artect Insole foam. All it really is just a styrofoam sheet, and this can be found in the insulation section of hardware stores. Now the reason why I'm using this stuff and not the pink stuff, which is what everyone else uses, is because I live in Southern California, where the pink stuff is very, 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 very hard to get, where you just can't find it at all. Surprisingly, I was able to find a little bit of the pink stuff, and it came in 1 by 3 foot sheets that were 3 inches thick, called craft foam at Home Depot, and it was really pricey. This sheet here cost me $10. It's a 4 by 8 sheet, and it's a 1/4 inch thick. This is just the base layer. As you can see, it is quite a bit long, so I'm going to have to use the hot wire knife to kind of just cut off that section there. The only thing that kind of sucks about this foam is it does have this plastic layer. You can kind of see the difference there on top of it that you have to peel off, and that has this weird Artec pattern logo stuff all over it. Just gotta peel it off. And then over here on the other side, which you can see on my thicker sheets here, it has this aluminum foil, and that can also just be peeled off. But before you take the hot wire knife to it, you do have to peel off this stuff because the hot wire knife will not go through those two materials. So I'm going to peel this off and then I'll cut it, and we'll come back and we'll see what it looks like. One thing to note about this paper and foil stuff is do it slow. Slowly peel it. Go to an edge. Slowly just do this. Just like an inch or a 1/4 inch at a time. If you rush it, you might cut the foam or rip the sheets. You don't want to do that. So I just finished putting and cutting up all the foam pieces. And as you can see, it doesn't cover up this area here. And that's okay. because these extra sheets here are just going to be used underneath the track. And whatever's left over, I'll add in later. But the whole reason for that is that this entire layout is not going to have any grades for the track. And so when the train comes through here, I need to make sure that there is the same consistency in height. And so we'll just reuse those pieces there. And the 2-inch thick foam for the mountain carving that will happen over here will be reused. So the next step is just to add some white glue underneath the big sheet here and just glue it down to the wood. So with the big sheet now glued down, we just have to get the track, and we'll know where to glue down these sections. But for today's video, I think that covers it all. So thank you for watching, and happy railroading.